And YouTube is going. So whenever you're ready, feel free to start.
All right. Welcome to the special meeting, December 9th, 2020 of the Design Review Board. Design Review, no tree board today. And consistent with Executive Order N 2920, in-person participation by the public will not be permitted, and no physical location from which the public may observe the meeting will be available. Remote public participation is allowed using Zoom. You can download and get the Zoom information on the city's website. So let's come to order with a roll call, if you would please, Alan.
All right. So Christine Lovell.
Here.
Ron Harry.
Yep, here.
Lars Langberg.
Here.
Ted Luthen.
Here.
All right, and then Gregory Beal is excused, and Carrie Bush is also excused.
Sounds good. Both of them have conflicts. So let's see, we have some minutes from our last meeting. They were actually a big bundle of minutes, if I remember correctly. Let me pull those up. Anybody have any comments, corrections, changes on minutes?
I was looking at them with sitting with my daughter, and she said, "Geez, you were just talking and talking at that meeting, weren't you?" Like, oh my God, what did I say? They look fine to me. I would make a motion to approve unless someone has comments.
All right, anybody else have any comments? And if not, how about a second?
I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no additional comments, any additional comments? Let's call the question then. All in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 Sounds like minutes are approved with a unanimous vote. All right. Planning Department update on matters of general interest. Any,
Right.
Alan?
So I have a couple updates for you guys. The City Council will be reviewing the Planning Commission applications for the new potential commissioners at the next upcoming Planning or City Council meeting. We still have one open position for the Design Review Board. So we're going to be renoticing that hopefully later this month. And Ted, I'm sorry to put you on the spotlight here.
Yeah.
But would you be okay continuing your role until either the appointments take place? I know you've reapplied, but I just have to confirm.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Perfect.
Not a problem. I can't believe nobody wants to join our fun little group.
No.
All right, so continuing the updates, the sign program at 231 Petaluma, the smaller building part of the CVS development, their sign program was approved by the City Council as recommended by the Design Review Board. There was some discussion at the Kelvin levels, but ultimately the council went with the board's recommendation of a range between 3,200 and 3,500. Sorry, 3,500 Kelvin. So just nothing here. At the upcoming December 15th City Council meeting, the City Council or the county will be presenting on their Project Home Key project to convert the Spatchwell Inn to shelter those in need. And the last update I have is that a fourth parklet is going to be going to the City Council meeting next week. This parklet will be located on the north of Ramen Gaijin, so kind of in the plaza, but outside the parking. And will be essentially, this will create a publicly accessible covered dining area. So that's it in terms of my updates.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Any general questions for staff? And if not, we'll move on. Any comments from the public regarding items not on our agenda?
I have not received any.
Nothing?
And I don't see any in the meeting.
Okay. Statement of conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to our regular agenda item, which is a continuation of 6950 Burnett Street, the livery.
All right. So as Ted had noticed, this project was continued by the board at their November 18th, 2020 meeting to address revisions to the mechanical platform / stair shelter, which at that meeting was referred to as the water tower. the column bases, the trellises, as well as any other changes the applicant sees fit. So the applicant has responded to these revisions by revising the mechanical platform / stair shelter to be a more enclosed structure, somewhat resembling a barn. This new structure, or this revised structure, utilizes the clear stain cedar currently being used on this level and kind of continuing that overall pattern. The column bases have been, so the project moved the existing concrete bases and it has continued the brick veneer throughout. As for the trellises, the applicant has provided details on the trellises on the landscape plans, as well as providing a complete landscape plan for review and approval at this time. Overall, staff finds the project to be substantially compliant and recommends a conditional approval. So if you have any questions of staff, please let me know. Otherwise, I believe the applicant is here.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Any questions of staff?
I do. So on the drawings, it still says landscapes a deferred submittal, but that is not correct. We're reviewing it for approval today. Is that right?
Let me double check. I believe that is the intention, is that the landscape plan can be reviewed as part of the submittal. And Grace, if you're here, you can feel free to clarify as well.
This is Grace. The complete landscape package has been submitted. The intention is to make sure you had all the information on the trellises. That's where we have been showing all the trellis information, and that was information that you wanted to make sure was complete and clear. So we have submitted it for that, and because we were submitting it, we wanted to bring you the entire landscape package. So if it's possible to get it all approved today, that would be great. You did catch it on the front page. That was my mistake. I just did not change that from deferred submittal.
Okay. So then, Alan, I'm just curious how the city reviews that whole landscape submittal with the water efficient ordinance and so on. Like, that's not something I know very well. Our landscape expert is not on this project, so I assume that the city reviews it, the city public works reviews it, or the engineer reviews it as well. So we don't really have to, pretend we know what we're talking about.
For the Milo, yeah, that's correct. So I believe it's initially reviewed as part of the planning review, and then as part of the formal review, and it's reviewed as part of the building permit in the formal review.
Right. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, but thank you for clarifying. No further questions.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, does our applicant like to say a few words?
Well, thank you for having us back. I don't have a lot to say. I think kind of Alan has said it all, and we covered so many things at the last meeting, but we did address, as we've just clarified, the landscape documents do show all of the trellis information completed as final for our design. And as you can see in the 3D models, we did take the concrete bases on the columns away. And so that looks good. And so the other thing that we've done is redesign that mechanical platform. And I do want to point out, and if you happen to have the images in front of you, the one that's called the South Main Street 6 feet. If
I can pull it up on screen. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Oh, someone else has it.
I got it, but here, I'll pull it up again. And sorry, I don't have the names in front of me, Grace.
So the one on the other side, so that would be you can just go through them.
So this one?
Yes. If you can, there's another one, Alan, that's the one that's lower down.
Yeah.
So we noticed this morning, and I apologize for this clarification, but I'll demonstrate with my the annotation. the ceiling in here, in the alleyway, the ceiling above the front entry and up here is all intended to be cedar. And we just caught that this morning on this model that it wasn't shown that way. So I just wanted to clarify that. We were able to get a lot of stuff done since we've last seen you, but we caught that this morning and I just wanted to clarify.
Gotcha. Thank you for the
And
clarification.
top of the stair tower also, or no?
No, the top of the stair tower, we have a cedar around. We're going to leave that as the stucco.
Okay.
All right. Any questions of our applicant? You guys covered a lot of ground in a short period of time here.
Grace, can you describe the floor plan change related? Because it looks like there was, at least in the last iteration, like you had almost like a floor at the second level, the way the, yeah.
So the floor plan actually did not change much at all. Should I share my drawings?
Yeah, let me give you the rights to do that, Grace. Okay, you should be able to share now.
All right. Let me get the right drawings up before I share.
And I didn't notice a floor plan change, but the elevation with the gray stucco makes it sort of feel like there's a floor there.
Excuse me. You know, we did not make what really changed. And so here, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So I've got the elevations out. Let me skip over to the plan. Really what happened was we do not have the overhang. We do not have the overhang anymore around it. We took the building straight up. So what is up there are the ducts, the vents for the hoods that go all the way up, which is why we have the thickness on this as it goes through this part of it. That's where that is. So really the plan didn't change. We still have the space up here that's actually, we have a parapet around it. So the plan has not changed. Functionally, it's still as we need it, the mechanical space.
Right.
We just cleaned up the look so that it was a little cleaner and
Okay, great, thank you.
you're welcome.
I have one other question, so the trellises we're looking at, and so it was your choice not to leave that corner without a trellis, like you have it kind of back further on that side over the, to the east, but not at the corner.
That is correct. The trellises actually have remained where they were showing before.
Okay.
Yeah, and that has been our decision to leave as is.
All right. Okay, I don't have any other questions.
All right.
Okay, I have some questions for Grace.
All right, go for it.
Okay, Grace, I don't seem to have all of the pages that you indicate on the sheet, like I do not have L 2.3. So could you go through and describe the trellises to me? It looks like there's two main trellises.
Yes. Let me get to that sheet and let me make sure I know what sheet you don't have. You don't have L 2.3?
That's correct. The plan shows that's Trellis B. I don't have the sheet for Trellis B in my packet.
You've kind of caught me because I'm not seeing L 2.3 either. So
there isn't one in the set.
I don't have one in my set. That's all I know.
No, I don't have it either.
Which trellis are you asking about, Christine?
It's Trellis B.
B as in boy?
Yes.
That's on 2.2.
Well, I'm asking Grace if she could describe them. That would be the easiest thing.
Okay, okay. So the Trellis B is the one that's on the north deck, and it's a wood post structure. So it's a wood post structure. It's got a sloped roof. We have horizontal members that come around, and the reason for the horizontal members on the on the trellis is so that we can actually install some kind of sliding doors that will open and close, so that we can control the temperature inside. So if it's really cold outside, we can actually close the shutters around, and we can actually have some place that's comfortable inside. So that's the reason for a horizontal member. We've got a sloped the beams, and we've got it stacked up in a trellis type, as many trellises are, and we have a roof on top, so that it is, so it, you know, it's not rain won't go through. We've got a roof on it.
So it's more like a covered structure, not a trellis then?
That's correct.
Because I mean, a trellis technically would be open, if I understand trellis correctly.
Well, and that's fine. It's just, the structure of it is layered like a typical trellis. But it is a covered, we are covering it, so it is protected underneath.
So is it an open structure? You're gonna have doors, you're saying?
There's no, it's open below, there's no walls on it, but there are sliding kind of fabric that you can move over just to help protect you a little bit. But it's not a, a sliding material, but it's not a door. It's not, there's no walls on it. It's just that there are, I guess there's sliding partitions just to kind of, so that you can close it off on all four sides. But there's no actual door. There's no structural walls. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it would surprise me that it would end up looking like this, because then if you've got a solid roof on it and you have no lateral bracing whatsoever on the structure, I'm suspicious that it will end up looking different in reality once the thing's designed.
So we do know we can either, instead of putting a kicker on there, an angled brace, we will put a angled metal to create the shear that we need in order for this. Just like any trellis or structure we have. If you don't put a kicker or an angle brace on there, then you can typically handle it with a structural metal that's custom for
What
that.
do you mean by a structural metal?
Just a plate, just a plate, like an L bracket or a plate.
Boy, I wouldn't stamp and sign that. You got an engineer that'll stamp and sign that?
It's a custom designed metal plate that handles all the shear load. I don't know, have you not ever used that? Instead of an angled brace?
I've never even seen that.
Well, I can go take a picture of it. I've got it on my house.
Is this really anything we should be discussing about in such?
Well, I'm not.
An angle brace? Come on.
Yes, Ron, it should be, because if you have a metal, I'm just suggesting that it's not going to end up looking like this, because if you have a solid roofed material, not a trellis, then you have to have a lateral support. I'm just putting that out there on the table. If you had a trellis and it was open, it would be a different structure.
If that's engineering, not design.
But it would, if you had to put a lateral, a real lateral system on it, it would look different than this.
Our engineer has reviewed this and is confident that it can look like this.
Okay. I'm just bringing that up. So the other trellis is, can you describe that the trellis A?
Yeah. Let me just make sure I'm talking about the right trellis. Trellis A. Trellis A is what's on the top floor, toward the, on the west side. And its intent is to handle the, some hanging plants. And if you go to your landscape drawings, I think it'll help describe what that is. It's a metal frame, this trellis is. And let me get to the sheet and I can show you exactly the intent of this. It's on sheet L 3.6, and it's the very top right picture, and that's the intent of what that will look like. That's why it's just an open trellis right now. We realize that at some point it may just be trellis, but through the year we do anticipate that it'll be full with vines and color. And that's the image that that best describes that area. Do you need more information on the trellis itself, Christine?
I'm just trying to understand what it is. So you're on L 3.6, up in the upper left-hand corner. Is that what you're talking about?
The top left-hand corner, yes.
Yeah, so you're just gonna have, let's see, 2 by 3. So you're just gonna have these arches at a certain spacing kind of going down the trellis. These 2 by 2 HSS arches.
Right. So that they create the framework for the landscape to hang from.
Okay. So basically, you just have the metal arches going at certain spaces.
Right.
Right. So if you have this arcing arch that's spaced at certain spacings going down the trellis with really nothing in between. Maybe some horizontals, it looks like on the plan.
Yeah, it looks like if you look at 2.
So you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 arches lined up.
Right.
So you're going to grow vines on. That sounds like what the plan is here.
Yes. And between them, they've got pieces between them to help support them. And
Right.
Again, the structural engineer has reviewed this.
Well, yeah, with steel, you can make a welded metal moment-resisting connection. So, I mean, that's understandable. So, and then you're just going to paint it black?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So there is one more trellis, which is the trellis C, is that correct?
I'm sorry, trellis, which one? C?
Is there a trellis C? That's the final trellis? There's 3 trellises altogether?
There are actually 4. Trellis A and B are on the 4th floor. Trellis C and D are on the 2nd level. And
Okay.
those are also metal trellises on the 2nd level. And the ones that faces south are solar panels on top and they are intended to protect from rain below. It's a panel. And on the other side, it'll be a glass that is similar to the panel of the solar panel on the trellis D. But those structures are close to the same. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Grace. That was really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? Ron, any questions?
Yeah, I have a trellis question.
Okay.
Or not. On the rounded arch trellis that you can see from 116, the rounded top one, are you planning on putting a vegetation on there or some kind of fabric or waterproofing at the top, or is that just going to stay as it is?
Are we talking about the trellis that's on the 3rd level?
I think I don't have anything on the screen. It's the only one that's rounded arch. It's just
yeah. So it's not.
What are you gonna do with it?
So that that trellis structure, that metal structure is there for the plants to grow. And so there will not be a cover or a mesh or anything like that over it. It will just be the plants that kind of
Oh,
cover.
there's going to be lands. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Ron?
That's it.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Nope.
Alan, do we have any members of the public here, or did we get any questions or comments from any public members?
Nope, no public comments at all.
All right. And I don't see any members in attendance. So, Grace, thank you very much. I think we'll bring it back to the board for a little deliberation. Let's see, what do we have in terms of comments? Christine, would you like to start?
Okay, I'll start. I think we asked them to make some revisions to the project, and I think that they did that, and I'm satisfied with the revisions. I would like to add a caveat, which is just sort of general speaking, because I don't know if we ever really addressed this, but one of the issues that we've had with the design review board in the past is we approve one thing and then something else gets built. And sometimes you can hardly recognize the building. Like that building that got built, I forget what it's called now, but the one that's next to the old Peter Lowell's building, that little Quonset hut shack thing.
Right.
That is quite different from what we approved.
Yeah.
So I guess this is maybe a question for Alan, but I mean, like, if we're going to approve this as is, I would like to see that if changes are made to this, that it gets brought back to the board.
Yeah, we can.
And how do we deal with that? I mean, it should go without saying, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
In my experience, primarily elsewhere, it's, minor changes such as minor changes can sometimes be done at staff unless it was something that the board specifically touched on, in which case, in my experience, you always bring that back to the board. So I'm happy. I see no issue with adding that as a condition of approval.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, well, I would like to see this project get approved. So that's where I stand.
Great. Thank you. Lars, how about you?
I would say thank you for making the changes in relatively short order. I think the quote unquote water tower is much better. I think it, as you work on it further, it could still use a level of detail that I think it's it changed material, which looks much nicer. It's still, sort of just a big unarticulated volume, but I think it's much better, and I'm fine with it. I still think the corner of the building needs more, and I'm a little surprised there's not a sunshade structure there, which you did have, I think, even a while back. Like that corner seems like it'll get the most sun of any of them. But besides that, just sort of helping reinforce the corner, which I brought up before, but it's nothing I would hold up the project for. I'm glad the column bases have changed. The landscape I made a comment about. I've reviewed it as best I can. It seems fine, but it's not my expertise. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Ron?
Is Gregory there?
I don't believe he is on.
Okay, I wanted to ask him, has he not applied for the design review committee for next year because he's too busy or not?
Now, what does that have to do with this project?
He has a lot to do with the project. So anyway, it's just an off the wall comment because I don't have any other comment. I think it looks great.
Sounds good.
Something to say.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I'll echo what everybody else said. I really appreciate the response to the comments, and how quickly you turned around those comments and the changes that are made. I like what you've done with the water tower feature. I wasn't adamant about the concrete bases, but it does look better without them. And I appreciate the landscape, kind of like Lars. It's not my area of expertise, but it looks good to me. And appreciate you coming back with information about the trellises. And I do also echo what Christine was saying. You know, that has been an issue in the past, and that what we think we're going to get and what we do get are two different things. So I do appreciate those comments. But I'm all for approval and letting this project move on down the road. So if somebody wants to throw a motion to that effect on the table, let's do it.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
All right, we have a motion for approval.
I'll second.
And we have a second from Ron. Thank you very much. Any additional comments?
Yes, I want to add in the caveat about the revisions. If anything changes, that it get brought back, or, you know, Alan brought up the minor changes, and I don't know where you draw that line, but I do think that we want to, since it's in a prominent location, we want to keep our eyes on, you know, a lot of things can happen with a project. You start to look at the budget, you see what it's really going to cost, on, and I think we should keep our eye on this project because of its prominent location. So I don't know how to word that, and I don't know how to draw the line between minor and not minor. So
typically, in my experience, that's a you know, staff or director discretion right there. But typically, and just so you know, kind of my process when I see a minor change, what I'm looking at is, one, did the board previously look at or discuss this item? Two, does it change the actual physical appearance of the building? Such as, like, for example, if you're going from slate gray to dark gray, it wasn't discussed or wasn't an issue and the color wasn't a major concern in the board review, that could be like a staff level modification or approval. But if it's something significant where it's, you know, significantly changing the look and aesthetic, such as, you know, kind of going from like the clear cedar to a redwood or something like that, that's something I want to, you know, take back to the board. Just so you know what I'm looking at, or anything that was previously discussed or identified as an issue by the board in the past. That's something I'd want to get the board's feedback on. And for, so, you know, like I would review the minutes, make sure this wasn't a discussed item previously. So that's just kind of how I process it. But it could also, you know, depends on how you guys want it. If any changes you want to see it, you can phrase it that way as well.
well, I would think that changes like color changes, material changes, the shapes of the structures, any kind of change like that, I think would be significant, not minor. That's my feeling about it.
And would you want to add that as a condition of approval? Is that what you're proposing?
That's what I'm suggesting, yes.
Yeah. Alan, is that something you can craft, a conditional approval to that effect?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
You know, that seems like something that we should just have as a blanket condition of approval for every project.
I believe
I think so too, absolutely. I'm trying to protect against the surprise building that shows up.
Right, I mean, this one is more prominent than many, so yeah, we should be extra careful, but it seems like any project that, because when it goes for building permit, it goes back to planning for another look, and if they see something that is quite different, they should bring it back, right?
And we do have that comment, but we can always craft it to be a little bit more specific.
I think we should be, because we have that building next to the Peter Lowell building. That thing changed substantially from what we approved, just as an example.
Yeah. But so I would say, I mean, if there is this standard condition, I don't know, that maybe we should revisit that at another meeting, just as a, you know, let's review that condition moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with Lars on this, and this is a separate issue and not pertaining just to this particular structure at all. This is a general conception here, not anything to do with this particular structure.
Well, then I'm going to be particular. If the colors change, the shapes change, the materials change, then it comes back to the board. I'm not anticipating that this will happen, but I think we should look at it if that's the case.
So
that should be on any application, not just this one.
Well, I'm being specific here.
Be general.
As opposed to having nothing. Yeah, it should be, but it's not.
Yeah, and so this could be the first of the kind of moving forward. I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
okay.
think so too.
I think that's fine, except that I like what Alan said, like the gray, if the gray changes from this gray to that gray, and the gray wasn't a huge concern, that shouldn't come back to the board. So it's not color just across the board. Any color change comes back to us.
Yeah,
That
Well,
would
I
be-
mean, that's where you get in that line in the sand, and I don't know how to draw that line, but, you know, I don't want it to be so vague that it could be anything too. Like if it goes from gray to orange, so however you want to word that. Because I agree, if it's a shade of gray, yeah, but if it goes from gray to orange, just as an example.
Yeah.
You guys are making this way too complicated. It's more difficult
Part of
here.
our job.
Why don't we just go ahead and vote and we can talk about this some other time?
and
Okay.
mind if I
Because I think because one of the members is not happy with that, Ron. One of the members wants to.
Oh,
You know,
okay, Christine, can we just go on and vote?
I had one quick revision real quick.
Yeah.
I just was reading the findings and I noticed the approval is to the prior plan. So if we just update it to the plans date stamp December 1st.
Under your conditions of approval. Okay, yeah, you have November 10th.
Yeah, so I just want to update that and make sure we're all on the same page there.
okay.
Yeah, so the existing condition of approval says approval is granted for the design review described in the application and plans, date stamped, whatever the date is.
Yeah.
This approval is valid for 3 years. So we do have that. It doesn't go on to describe what sort of changes would trigger additional review.
Yeah, and then the second one underneath that is all construction shall conform to the plans date stamped November 10th, 2020, unless the design is modified herein.
Applicant must, okay.
I'm looking at that. I think I may have in my prior employment, we had a standard condition that was pretty much captured this issue.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can pull that up as a template and maybe we can start incorporating that going forward.
Okay.
Give me 1 minute here.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan.
While we're waiting, so we still have deferred submittals to review at some point for signage and exterior lighting, right? See Grace nodding, I'll take that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
You know, Lars, I really kind of disagree with you here as far as one member. We don't have to have anything unanimous. All we have to do is have a quorum. You can disagree with that, but nothing has to be unanimous.
That's true. No, I didn't mean it. I just mean we need to hear her out, really. And
Well, that's fine.
yeah, that's all I meant.
But I think we should have a separate meeting about this. It has nothing to do with these poor folks here that got to listen to this.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding it, but going forward, I can certainly have a standardized language with there and make it a little bit more clear. And still trying to.
Let's have another meeting about that.
Yeah, well,
Okay, I'm gonna have a little bit of an argument with Ron here now. So Ron, if they actually build a different building and the towers are different and the materials are different and so you're fine with that because we approved this, but they built that?
No, Christine, that's not what I meant at all. You're not being a good libertarian here at all. Sorry about that, but you're not. You're dealing with specific things. If they paint the thing orange, of course. That's why I'm just talking about small little details that have nothing to do. We don't need to nitpick everything. We like the building. Let's move on. And if you want to bring that up again in a future date, that's fine. Just leave this thing alone. Sorry.
but I think part of the issue is
That's not what I'm talking about though. What I'm talking about is let's just do a hypothetical here because we have experienced this in the past. So what I'm saying is if we have the cedar water tower, let's just say, and they get going in construction and the budget goes out of the water and all of a sudden that cedar is just not working, so it goes to stucco, let's just say, hypothetically, then I would want to see that again before the board.
And so maybe
I'm talking about significant changes, not little minor nitpicking changes.
Well, I think the reason Christine is mentioning this is that there's precedence for it. We've had it happen before. We've had a wood-sided house get built in stucco, and we've had buildings come out entirely different than what we looked at. So it's not from out of left field. We've both been on this board long enough to have seen this happen a number of times. So, Grace, I'm sorry you need to sit through all this.
We totally understand, and we do plan on getting anything back. If there's any kind of change like that, we absolutely will get it back. So I understand, and so no problem.
And it really has no reflection on you or this particular project.
Right. And Grace, I know you would do that, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to iron out some of these problems we had, like we had the buildings featuring mechanical equipment also, and so we had to start thinking about that. But that's why I'm just trying to, you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
To get the language.
I understand.
And it's not directed at you personally, and I'm sure you're going to build this beautiful building exactly as it is, but we do have this precedent, and I think that as we go through and learn these things, we need to set this language.
I understand.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think there has to be some authority, not just us, to bring that to our attention. We don't have any authority to do that. So what you need is some kind of legal or political or something authority to make that point, to bring it to our attention. I mean, we're not supposed to go over there and watch everything. So we have no authority to do that, Ted, as far as I know.
So can I comment on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Often a planning staff discretion. So I think, and I can't speak for the prior planning staff before Carrie or my term here, but I know typically, once again, minor, revisions due to just, I was kind of saying, going from like, Sherwin-Williams slate gray to bare dark gray or something like that. That's typically staff are going to try to handle that and say this, if it's the same overall color, it's just half a shade difference, and it's just because they can't get the Sherwin-Williams paint.
But you and the staff would have to walk by and inspect, right? They're not going to say, would you we change this from one gray to another? Yeah. You're going to walk by and say, is that the original or is that another gray? I mean, it's a mouse hole.
So essentially, planning staff tries to use our discretion, and minor changes that are not going to be significant, we try to handle in our house. If it is a significant change where we think, kind of like what Christine's saying, shape, significant change to the color or materials, typically that's something that, not typically, but always, that's something I think as staff, it's our responsibility to take back to the board, or at least have a discussion with the chair and make sure that it is, substantially compliant, or whether it's something the board would like to see. So, and I'm just trying to think how we can get a better condition in there going forward. And I also
because I would be happy with language that said something to the effect of planning staff discretion.
So here's what I had previously used in my prior planning life. The building techniques, materials, elevations, and appearance of this project as presented for approval by the design review board on this date shall be the same as required for the issuance of a building permit. Any modifications to the approved plan shall be submitted to the planning division in writing detailing the changes prior to submitting to the building division. Any future additions, expansions, remodeling shall be clearly detailed and submitted to the planning division, subject to review and approval of the community development director and the design review board if necessary. So that's kind of how I previously handled these type of situations. So essentially staff gets the modifications. We have the ability to either do it in-house or take it to the design review board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounded good to me. Christine,
yeah, I think that sounds reasonable to me. Yeah.
And I can more or less lift that out and bring it over to it if that language is appropriate. And I can modify it and make it just the design review board, the correct hearing date.
Right, correct bodies of, yeah. That sounds reasonable. Christine, that sounds reasonable to you?
Yeah, it does.
Lars, are you amenable to that change?
Sure.
Ron, does your second still stand if we have an amended motion?
What's the amendment?
Amendment was to include
Forgot,
the,
it's been so long. I don't even remember.
to include the language that Alan is just about to read again. If you would, Alan.
The building techniques, materials, elevations, and appearance of this project as presented for approval by the Design Review Board on today's date shall be the same as required for the issuance of a building permit. Any modifications to the approved plans shall be submitted to the planning department in writing, detailing the changes prior to submitting to the building division.
That
Any
sounds fine.
future
Yeah, that's
additions,
fine.
expansions, remodeling shall be clearly detailed and submitted to the planning department, subject to review and approval by the community development director and/or the design review board if necessary.
I'm fine.
Is that okay with you? Okay. So we have a motion, we have an amended motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'm seeing none. Let's call the question. All in favor of approval? Say aye and raise a hand.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
All right, I hear ayes and see hands. Unanimous approval. Grace, thank you for your submittal. Alan, thank you very much for digging up that provision. That was very helpful.
Somebody's waving there.
okay.
Oh,
She's saying goodbye. Or she has something to say.
I don't know.
Grace,
I just want to thank you guys so much for fitting us in and doing this special meeting for us. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your approval today. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you for your work and getting this thing done. Look forward to seeing that thing start construction.
We are too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both.
Bye-bye.
Did we all get free
Thank you
drinks
very
there?
much.
Maybe.
Maybe one.
All right.
All right. Let's see. That is the last of our scheduled items. Since we are all here, I thought this would be a good time to also talk about, there was some discussion earlier about having, about preliminary reviews and communications with applicants. And I talked a little bit about it with both Alan and Carrie, and I don't think we want to get into speaking about specific projects here in this meeting because they're not on our agenda. But I thought we would take this time to just talk about whether we want to have a discussion about how we handle communications in preliminary reviews and study sessions. Is that something we would all like to put on an agenda to discuss? And Carrie had some thoughts on how we might facilitate these a little less formal applications or submittals that we get.
I think, yeah, we can talk about it. Is it what you have a concern somehow from the way the Woodmark project went? Is that where this is coming from?
Yeah, it was a discussion about whether we gave direct enough or clear enough direction.
Yeah.
I think there was some question about that. I think there was some question about, is there something else we as a board can do to make it more collaborative or participate more? I certainly don't want to get into designing buildings with anybody, but is there a way we could have a little more collaboration? And Ron and Christine, if there's something else you have thoughts about, the process in general, let us know what that might be.
Well, as you know, Ted, I think this is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I feel with this particular project has going by us for almost a year now.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly feel I'm starting to change my mind about this particular project with some major modifications. So I think we should be a little clearer to the applicant what we expect here, as it appeared to me, with the exception of the last part of that meeting we had a week ago. Am I going too far here at this point?
I think we may be going a little too far.
Okay, then I agree that I think we should talk about it. I won't go any further.
Okay.
I think the intention is to discuss whether we should be essentially discussing kind of the pre-application process and how we want to handle them going forward. Is that correct, Ed?
Yeah, that was my thought, because I do think we want to be careful I don't think we want to open up a meeting to just talk about this project, because then we have to have public comment. We need to invite the applicant, obviously. We may want to do that. I don't know that we don't. I've heard some concerns with the level of sort of direction we gave. So I thought, okay, if there's a problem with the level of direction we gave on this project, maybe we should talk about that kind of across the board on all projects. Is there a different level of communication or direction we can give that might be more helpful to people?
Yeah.
Without focusing on any single project. If there is an issue with this project, there's going to be an issue with every project that comes to us as a preliminary study. So is there a way that we can give more direct input? And I think part of the frustration too with preliminary studies is you sort of give fairly vague direction, and you hope that something specific will come back in a positive sort of way, but you don't have any long periods of time go by, and then you don't have communication, and then you get something that maybe is entirely different. Anyway, I don't know.
I think it's a difficult topic to take up, because I think that, each project has its own intentions, and, there's budget involved and sort of different types of intentions. And somebody may come in with a preliminary idea with the intention of really hearing what the public has to say. And then somebody else might come in and they're just sort of pretending like they're going to hear what the public has to say, and they're going to do what they're going to do anyway for the other reasons that they have. So I think that we're really just still stuck with the situation of each project as it comes in, how we're going to approach our comments. And some projects you can see quite clearly that, their constraints are not really going to be amenable to our comments. Other types of projects that may be different. So I don't see how you deal with this without just seeing each specific project as it stands alone. For these reasons.
Well, and it's also hard to give input because we're not aware of whatever constraints there are. So it's easy to say, make it smooth and curvy, and that'll be something we can approve. And we don't know what that's a deal breaker because their construction team doesn't know how to build smooth and curvy. So there's that aspect of the direction that comes from this body, is that we're not here to redesign it. And if we throw out an idea, we don't really know whether that idea is really feasible or whether that idea will get us what we want at the end.
Or works with their particular program.
Works with their program, exactly, or their financing or anything else. So it's kind of easy to think of these neat ideas that might work, but whether they actually work or not, we don't really know, because it takes a lot of work to figure this stuff out.
So is that when you're talking about collaboration with the applicant, so that when we say curvy, they say, well, actually, we can't do that? Or so, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and Carrie and I were talking about this, whether I've always seen the format of these meetings kind of take place kind of like our typical meeting. An applicant makes a presentation, we bring it back to the board for deliberation, and maybe these things need to be a little bit more collaborative and back and forth. I'd have to learn a little bit more about how that works in the context of a public hearing and those sorts of things to understand the nuts and bolts of it, just so we maintain the
I know, I think, on this particular, what we're talking about here, I think if we have some kind of meeting discussing any part of that, I think it's important in this particular case just to stick to Woodmark, because it's extremely controversial among many. It's taken up a year of our time with a lot, all these negatives we've thrown. I haven't heard one positive yet from anybody, frankly. I know that's changed, but I think we need at this particular time, if we're going to do this next week, to particularly talk about this project, not any other projects in the future. I think we're going far ahead of this. Stick to one. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think the challenge with sticking to one means having another project meeting. And we're not sure the applicant is interested in doing that, and we'll have anything new to present at that meeting. Anyway, so we do have to, be aware of what'll happen if if we say we want another Woodmark meeting. I guess we would need to have some reason to have that, some direction, some clear something to bring to that meeting. I'm not sure that I have a whole lot beyond what we've said.
Well, maybe we shouldn't just even have it then. I mean, it was my idea, but maybe we should just forget it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, I'll just say, I think, Ted, what you're saying generally is fine. I think we can do that. It may be as simple as changing the verbiage. Like if we have preliminary design review, that meeting has a different structure.
Right.
It's not just you say something, okay, you're done, then we say something, right? But actually is open to more dialogue. And that could be a fairly simple, just wording change in the meeting format.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, that might get us a little more back and forth and a little bit.
I think
more.
that's good.
It might give us some insight into understanding what those metrics are that are driving their thinking.
But I don't know, from my perspective, that happened with Woodmark, right? They told us this is our financials and this is why we have workforce housing, and right. There was quite a bit of that. To me, this project is so interesting and challenging because it's sort of a little bit out of our realm, like it's more, in some ways it's more of a zoning planning, like a planning commission kind of thing, or council thing, like how much affordable housing do we have in Sebastopol? Do we have more than the norm? Do we have less? Like that whole equation to me that's a great question. And I would be inclined to approve or not approve if I knew that information. So
that information is out there, by the way.
Well, I know. So it's incumbent upon me to just go do homework, but I'd rather just do it here if that can be part of the kind of presentation or the understanding of what we're getting into. I think it'd be a lot easier. It'd be, more straightforward in a way.
Ted, would you feel comfortable telling me what you know about the affordable housing thing with the state at this time? I also talked with Sarah Gurney for about a half hour the other day.
Carrie or Alan could probably answer that better than me. I mean, I know sort of vagary around it. I know that, I know that there've been a lot of changes. I sat in on that planning commission meeting talking about some of the changes at the state level and how those impact us. But I think Carrie and Alan probably have a pretty good, a much better understanding of it than I do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much further we can discuss on this since this isn't technically agendized.
Yeah.
Conversation.
I just think it's just, there are projects that are so clearly like right in our wheelhouse. It's pretty easy, discuss. This one is more complicated. Both the affordable housing issue and the whole traffic issue is just a weird, crazy thing of traffic study versus public perception, right? Like that's a big one.
Well, and really we have design review guidelines.
Right.
We don't have the general plan or the zoning code or any of those things to they're not our tools. That's not our tool bucket.
That's right. Yeah.
Somebody else's tool belt.
Yeah.
So,
I think that, we've got this very clear design review guidelines. And Ted, at the last meeting, you did such a great job of bringing forth what our design review guidelines were. I really appreciated that. But I think that that's really what we need to stick to.
Right.
That's our job.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to talk about this project, but one of the guidelines is the transitions to the neighboring properties. Does it make an appropriate transition? And that's, that's a question. And if we want to, on any project, if we want to grant a waiver to the guideline for whatever reason we want to, we have to then carefully consider that that sets a precedent to allow this waiver elsewhere.
Right.
I feel strongly about that. So I think we have to be careful when we've got our guidelines. And again, Ted, I really applaud you for your excellent work at the last presentation about bringing forth those guidelines. And that's really where it's pretty straightforward. And when the person comes in for the preliminary hearing, I think that we say, okay, here's our boundaries of what we're going to be deciding on. They're in these guidelines. And so here's what, to present to them in the preliminary meeting, any applicant, that they understand what these are and what we're going to be looking for. I mean, I think that would be the notion of it. There's been some discussion about changing those guidelines, but until we do, these are the guidelines that we have. And that's what we're working with. And this other stuff, that's why I said at the last meeting, I don't care if it's affordable for farm workers or if it's billionaire housing. Does it make appropriate transitions to the adjacent properties? That's the question. That's the design guideline. And I think we can be very clear about that in these preliminary meetings and make sure that the applicant understands that these are the areas that we're going to be looking into.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Alan, should we wrap it up there?
Yeah, and I guess my kind of follow-up there is, so is this something that we'd like to see agendized and have a further discussion on the pre-application process and what we're looking at? And if so, we can have it next Wednesday, or we can do it after the new year. Just want to throw that out there.
Do we have a meeting next week?
Currently, there's no meeting next week.
Okay.
So, and I know there was some desire at the
Do it
last
next week then.
not to have a third meeting in December. So if you guys want to push it to January, I think that'd be reasonable.
Yeah. Why don't we push it to January? And if anybody has any comments on it, email me in the meantime, and then Alan, maybe you and I can have a chat offline about it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
That's great. Thanks, Ted.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Well then, seeing that we are way beyond the end of our meeting, let's end our meeting.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.
All right.
Okay, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Bye.
Take care.